Thank you very much. I shall express my warmest thanks to organizers and especially to Mr. Ferdaus for opportunity to publish in his prestigious collection. My publication is about Marvaran Nahri, illustrated manuscripts in French collections. French collections of illustrated, illuminated manuscripts from Marvaran Nahr are kept in Paris in two public collections, the most prestigious French collections. The first one, National Library of France, BNF, which is the former library of the kings of France, established at the end of Middle Ages, and the second one is the famous Louvre Museum, founded at the time of the French Revolution. These both collections played an important role for discovery of the artistic heritage of Central Asia by European public. Many of so-called Persian paintings that started to be collected during the second half of the 19th century in Europe were Timurid or Shaybani Bukhara illustrated manuscripts. Interest for Marvaran Nahr illustrated manuscripts started much earlier in the bibliophile circles. Now, in the French National Library, two important manuscripts entered the collections during the 17th century. The first one, Anthology of the Bustan, in Bukhara style, was in the library of the famous minister Fouquet. The second one is the famous Mirajnameh in Turkey from the 15th century in Uyghur script. This book was bought in Istanbul by Antoine Galland, the secretary of French ambassador de Nointel, and sent to the famous minister of Louis XIV, Colbert. And after his death, the book went to the King's collection. The old building of the National Library in France, Rue de Richelieu, is partly housed in the former Colbert's palace. It consists now of the manuscript department, where some Marvaran Nahr manuscripts are kept. The printed books department is a new building. Our album intends to be a presentation of choice of images of the most significant illuminated or illustrated manuscripts from Marvaran Nahr, now in Paris. These manuscripts are pertaining to the period from 1430 to 1620, one of the most flourishing in the Timurid and Shaybani and even beginning of Jani kingdoms for art of book production. Among the interesting collectors, whose most of the books are now in the BNF with Marvaran Nahr, it's one Pierre de Bruet, a French officer living in Surat in India, end of 18th century, which was an officer of the Company for Indian Trade. Like other collectors, many of his books came from the Imperial Mughal Library of India. During the 19th century, one of the most important collectors interested in Central Asia was Charles Scheffer, who was diplomat, interpreter, and later director of the School for Oriental Languages. And he was also academician. Among the travelers, after the opening of the Trans-Caspian Railway, Edouard Blanc collected books, especially in Bukhara. Another interesting personality was the linguist James Darmesteter, who wrote about Avesta and Afghanistan. In 1868, he gave to the library a famous Marsan al-Asrar, famous Bustan. It's also a Marsan al-Asrar from the family of the ambassador in Tehran, Simonich. The growing interest for Persian painting in Paris at the 19th century, at the beginning of 20th century, has important names like Georges Marteau, interested in fabrication of paper, calligraphy, art of books. In collection, had very good pieces from Central Asia. His friend, Gaston Migeon, was the first keeper in Musée du Louvre to collect Islamic art, and he has a very nice album of Bukhara painting. It's not complete. The manuscripts or albums presented in the album 14 items published in a chronological order. Most of the texts are in Tajik or in Persian, but two important manuscripts are in Turkey. The most ancient and the first one is the famous Mirajnameh, the miraculous journey of Muhammad, with a commentary of some hadiths. The manuscripts remain full of mystery because it's not clear if it was copied in Herat or in another place, bound together with a translation of Tazkiratul Awliya in Turkey. And maybe it's a book ordered by Shahrokh himself. The paintings are extraordinary, and recently an excellent facsimile was published in Tashkent thanks to Mr. Firdaus. Another important Timurid manuscript is the copy of Sowar al-Kawakib of Sufi about representations of the stars. What's interesting is the fact that the manuscript belonged to Ulugh Beg himself and was copied and illustrated for him. Well, it's an inscription by his own hand, probably in Samarkand at the time of the construction of the Rasat Khana. The name of calligrapher and painter are unfortunately unknown, but it's maybe the work of Sultan Ali Bawardi, active at the court of Ulugh Beg. Amongst the manuscripts from a Shefer collection, we can quote a Shirin Khosrow by Hatefi, formerly in an Ottoman collection, good example of the first Marvaran painting of the beginning of 16th century, before the arrival of artists from Herat. It belongs to an interesting group of manuscripts. Some were produced in Bukhara or Samarkand, some others in Shahrokhiya, but no indication because volume is not complete. Another manuscript from the same period is a collection of prosa stories in Persian bought by Blanc during his travel to Central Asia. Various images are related to the story of Farrukhzad, and it's good witness of the popularity of the prosa short stories amongst population of Central Asia. Images are very simple, incurved horizon line, interesting, a plan of the Firdaus Garden Palace with 7 or 8 pavilions in the Nuhmanzar history. Coming from the Mughal library and later in the hands of Charles Shefer, an exemplary of the Tuhfat al-Ahrar by Jami, magnificent binding, and was copied in 1538. According to inscription, it was illustrated by Shekhzada, but a painting of Doppelpage is signed by Mahmoud Muzahid. This volume was very damaged by water and strongly restored, so it's difficult to make any conclusion about these attributions, which are important. A divan of Amir Shahi comes from Marteau, the collector of the beginning of 20th century. Shahi was extremely popular in Marvaran art during Shaybani time. The copyist is Sultan Ali Mashhadi, but the miniatures, very classical, were added a bit later at the time of Sultan Abdulaziz. Another manuscript copied by Mirza Muhammad Khatib was formerly in the hand of Bruet, the French officer from a French India Company in Surat, and it comes, as I told, from a Mughal library. Also restored, but can be dated from Maidel or a bit later of the 16th century. Illustration of the decoration of margins is very interesting. Formerly in a Marteau collection, a Golestan, very important, from 950 Hijri by Mir Ali Khatib, under the direction of the Kitab Dar, Sultan Mirak Munshi, during the time, fi Ayam ad-Dawla, of the Sultan Muzaffar ad-Din, Sultan Abdulaziz Bahadur. This manuscript is a brother of another manuscript from the Bodmer collection in Geneva, and it must be investigated, like for many manuscripts of Bukhara, why the Khans ordered several similar copies of the same text. The first painting was attributed to Mughal library to Abdullah Khaqani, one of the important painters of the court. of Bukhara. High quality of details, accuracy of representation, and hieratic attitude of the rulers. On the last painting, the name of Masiha on a monumental epigraph is maybe the name of a painter or gilder, but it's unknown from the source. Another masterpieces, Marsan al-Asrar, from Simonite collection, was copied in Bukhara by Mir Ali Kateb al-Sultan. It's also copied for Abdulaziz Bahadur under the direction of the same Sultan Mirak Kitabdar. Sometimes it's problem for the datation of the bindings because the manuscripts went from a library to another library. The signature of Mahmoud Mozaib is present in this volume. In fact, the first manuscript entered in the King's Library during the 17th century from the Fouquet collection is a very small, exquisite anthology of the Bustan, copied by another famous calligrapher, Mir Hossein Hosseini Kateb, and the opening page is occupied by a painting of prince visiting a scholar, but the text around the painting is not Saadi text, but a Ghazal of Hafiz. Previously in the collection of Darmesteter, a Bustan is also important, by the same, copied by the same Mir Ali Hosseini Kateb Khaqani in Bukhara. There are 4 paintings, but no attribution. On 3 of these paintings, the name of the Sultan Nauruz Ahmad Khan, one of the pretenders to Bukhara's throne, is written with the date of 1555. The album is also presentation of a Turki manuscript, poems of Mir Ali Shirnavai, Lisan Otter, and other texts, kept in the Supplément Turc 996. The first painting is an impressive composition showing assembly of sheikh, a mihrab with a fire, and a girl behind the curtain. Sheikh Sanan painting, but it's without any artist name. An inscription with a Persian bait. The gilder was probably not able to write Turkey, say that this image was done in Bukhara for the library of Muhammad Yar Bahadur, 53. 5 other illustrations are probably from the same date. It's also a reproduction of Gaston Mijon album of calligraphy and painting. And the last image shows the left side of a double page, formerly in Marteau collection. The right side was in Weber collection and is now in Washington. A young man in a composite dress is reading a poem, and he was sitting in front of a young lady holding a cup from about 1620, and these pages are from a lost album, very original because of the rich decor on the margins and the fantastic atmosphere. Painters are Muhammad Sharif and Muhammad Murad from Bukhara. So it's the content of this album. Thank you.